Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to get into some discussions regarding the spiritual manifestations of what is happening in our reality right now. We're going to break down a 1931 novel called The Little Golden Calf, and it seems to predict the dissolution of the Soviet Union 60 years after this novel was published. But first, today, we're going to get into this image right here from the 2012 animated 7-minute film, I, Pet Goat 2. And as you guys know, those of you who have seen this animated film, I, Pet Goat 2, President Bo Mama appears in the animation. And this is his shoe down here. And next to it, you see a coin. Now, upon close examination, many people have discovered that this coin is a British crown coin. But when we think about this on a spiritual level, we begin to understand that UK are the first two letters in the country that is in the center of the world spotlight right now. UK Crane. So this coin was really about Stu Crane, not the UK, wasn't it? Now, we covered this and also this 1931 novel called The Little Golden Calf, and you're going to see how the two link together in just a moment. We covered this back in 2013 when this channel first started, and I went back and watched the video, and weirdly enough, we noticed that this coin and shoe looked familiar, that it actually came from a monument in none other than Kiev. Here it is right here. The center of the world being repeated. Under Bo Mama's shoe, a coin. Under this character's shoe, a coin. Who is this character and what is this monument on the right side of the screen? Well, the monument is of a character from the Ruskin novel, The Little Golden Calf, and his name is Panikovsky. Now, many of you who have been following the channel since the beginning will remember this decode and how this linked into Panic Over the Sky. Panic over the sky, which is what's happening right now in the Stu Crane. Now, of course, this was a fictitious character in the book, but what was this really about? Now, back then, we thought this was about a comet that was coming into view. I think it was Comet Ison at the time. We thought that was the panic over the sky, but apparently that was just a precursor to what is happening right now. The panic over the sky. We know that comets bring death and destruction, don't they? So really, the comet Ison was a precursor. It was a tell to say about the future of Stu Crane, which started with Bo Mama. Unbelievable. Now, of course, a year after this decode that we did, there was a coup in the Stu Crane. 2013 was a decode. 2014 was the coup. And many people in the world leaders, believe that Bo Mama was at the center of that coup. So what are the odds of that? Now we're going to dig deeper into this monument for this show today. But first, I got this image from Victoria from Australia. And she got it from Wake Up 3. I don't know if that's her channel or someone else's channel. But they seem to have found another I, Pet Goat 2 connection to the Stu Crane. Now, what is this that you're looking at on your screen? This is a mosque in Kiev. And it's a very special mosque because it seems to match up almost exactly to this mosque in I, Pet Goat 2. This is screenshot from iPad Go to, remember, this was 2012 when Obama was president. And look at this mosque. I have it zoomed in here. And now we've seen other mosques that seemed to be this mosque, but I think this mosque is every mosque. That this is some kind of spiritual thread that's going through all these places. Remember, it was the Hagia Sophia, which matches this as well. And we found everything about Justinian and everything like that, and all the things connected to that. And the two-faced thump. Remember that? And the keys to the gate. All of that fits in as well. But here we have another manifestation of this. Now, this is creepy because I'm going to show you this side by side. And you're going to see that it virtually matches. Now, what is so special about this Kiev monument or this mosque here? Well, as you can see, it's being exploded by what? These, in the iPad Go 2 animated film, it's these jets that fly over, and they're shaped like an angle that you would use for like carpentry. They've got little tick marks on them, like a square. It looks like a square. There's 3 of them that fly right over, and they drop these bombs on the mosque. So we need to be watching this mosque, don't we? Look at the similarities. Let me try to zoom it into frame here so you can see this as clear as I saw it when I received this morning. I just got this morning. So this is breaking news right here. And so here you see all of the similarities, and you see the crescent moon. This one actually does have a crescent moon on top as well. It pretty much matches. And all of the Stu Crane is being bombed right now, which is exactly what's happening in iPad Go 2. So this actually manifested. Now, whoever found this, Wake Up 3, good job. Good job. Because this is huge. Now, what else is going on here? Well, this is a special mosque. Here it is right here in Wikipedia. And as you can see, this is the first mosque to have been built in the Stu Crane. It barely opened in 2011. Let me read the history of this special mosque on 46 Lukyanskoye Street. There's the address right there. I can't pronounce that, but there you see it. First attempt to build a mosque in Kiev was in 1897. Muslims at that time were able to open a house of worship on Peace Street. The next attempt to build one was made in 91. Ordinances on the allocation of the blah 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 land for the construction and maintenance of the memorial building was granted on February 5th, 1996 by the Kiev State Administration. Construction of the mosque took place in stages with money donated by the Muslims of the city. Prayers on Friday and holidays and special events started upon the completion of the first part of the mosque in 98. In 2000, a crescent moon was installed on the dome of the new mosque. It was finally opened in 2011, 1 year before iPad Go 2 published. So this is a very good candidate for this mosque. And as I showed you, this is the front of it. I actually verified this in Google Earth. I went into Google Earth. You can go right down on the street view, and this is exactly what you will see. So let's talk about next Bo Mama's role in the Stu Crane. Now, you know, they like to talk about revisionist history, right? Well, here's Brookings Institute, the Bo Mama Doctrine, and Stu Crane. And this article here reads as if Bo Mama could have done more and didn't do enough about helping the Stu Crane. And it talks about a fine line between what to do to help them versus getting into war with Russia. Talks about Stu Crane rejecting lethal military assistance. But all the while, what they don't tell you is that NATO countries were encroaching all around Russia's Western Front over all these Bo Mama years and before. Stu Crane was just the latest chapter in a long history. And They couldn't get a leash on their own far right wing forces who were perpetrating abuses against the Russians within their borders. So articles like this are insincere to me because it leaves out too much of the story, doesn't it? Obama was not a hero in all this. Kept pressuring Stu Crane to join NATO, and that was just the last domino in the setup. And it was a red line for Russia. So, let's get back to this monument, because this is very important. Because it seems to tie all this together. I'm going to give you an overview of the monument, and we're going to look at this coin under the shoe, and then we're going to compare this to Bo Mama, because the similarities are startling. So there's the coin under the shoe. And again, this character's name is Panikovsky. Here's a wide shot of him. The monument there, right there in Kiev. And his name is Panikovsky from the book, The Little Golden Calf. There are people posing with it. And what I want you to notice when we look at the Little Golden Calf story, that we begin to hear the story of his riches and how he came about it. This is page 101. And this is how he used to live his life before his riches in the book. Now, the setting is Kiev. Right here, you see it. This is why the monument was put there. Let's begin reading here. Go to Kiev, he said suddenly. Then you'll see that I'm right. Yes, go to Kiev. What are you talking about? Go to Kiev and ask that what Panikovsky did before the revolution. And he says, I'll tell you that before the revolution, Panikovsky was a blind man. This is why you see him in the dark sunglasses with the walking cane in the monument. Do you think I would have become a son of a Lieutenant Schmidt if I hadn't been for the revolution? I used to be a wealthy man. I had a family and a nickel-plated samovar on my table. And how did I make my living? With dark glasses and a cane. He took a black cardboard case with dull silver stars out of his pocket and showed Balagnov his dark blue glasses. These glasses fed me for many years, he said with a sigh. I would put them on, take a cane, go to this street and ask some nice-looking gentleman to help the poor blind man across the street. The gentleman would take me by the arm and walk with me. When he reached the opposite sidewalk, he would already be missing his watch. So he was a pickpocket. He was a phony blind man pickpocket, using a cane and dark glasses to rip people off. Later, you see here, he uses police corruption. He pays off the police to look the other way. He was a fraud, a scammer, and an imposter. Now, how this guy ended up being the hero of this book, in this novel, is beyond me. He's, I guess, the likable thief. Now, in the end of this, he gets mugged and exposed. Let's keep reading. He says, when we reached the opposite sidewalk, he would already be missing his watch, if he had a watch, or his wallet. Some people used to carry wallets, you know. So, why did you quit? He asked. The revolution, answered the former blind man. I used to pay a cop standing on the corner 5 rubles a month, and nobody bothered me. The cop even made sure I was safe. He was a good man. I ran into him recently. Can you really mess with the police these days? He says. And never seen nastier guys. They are so principled, such idealists. And so, in my old age, I had to become a swindler. But for such an important task, I can make use of my old glasses again. It's much better than a mugging. 5 minutes later, a blind man in dark blue glasses stepped out of a public restroom that was surrounded by tobacco and mint plants. His chin raised to the sky. He headed for the park exit, constantly tapping in front of him with a souvenir cane. Balagnov followed him. Panikovsky was unrecognizable. Holding his shoulders back and carefully placing his feet on the sidewalk, he almost walked into buildings. He was so diligent he even dispersed a small lineup that had formed at a bus stop. Basically, he then gets mugged. People find him out. And he has to be saved by this guy he was talking to. This was a millionaire pretending like he was blind. Unbelievable. Now I'll let you read the rest of this. I'll pin this in the pinned comment. But they basically they discover him. They say he's not blind, thief. They mug this guy. So, as you can see, just like the story, Panikovsky is a likable con man, covering the coin with his shoe while he's pretending not to see it. That's exactly what Obama did, wasn't it? Claiming not to see NATO's encroachment, appearing to be blind to it, but secretly fully understanding what his intentions were during this Ukrainian coup. Let's go back to this monument and read what they have to say about this. This is just crazy. Now, there are some aspects to this monument we're going to get into right here in this comment. The monument is dedicated to Panikovsky, the actor and writer. Have some fun. Make a wish and use a mirror to look under his foot to see if it will come true. Now, under his foot is this image. Let me find it here. And this is why you have to use a mirror to see under it. It's actually what many of you have described in the past when we have looked at this. It's some kind of an insult. It's the thumb between the four fingers. Let's get to that image here. There's a lot of images of this Panikovsky, very popular monument. Show people, there it is. And as you can see, now for those of you that live in this area, in this region of the world, Western Europe, what is this symbol mean? I think it's some kind of an insult, if I remember correctly. Some kind of an insult, like basically saying, I can't remember. Let's go into the chat and see if you guys remember what this symbol right here means. This hand gesture, the thumb between the four fingers. And there's more here. It says here, the monument is to Mikhail Panikovsky, a scammer and imposter, the third son of Lieutenant Schmidt, is one of my favorite in Kiev. He was a literary hero of The Little Golden Calf, satirical novel by famous Soviet writers Ilya Ilf and Yevgeny Petrov, but used to be a cult back in the Soviet times. Just like millions of other people of my generation, I can quote this fabulous novel by heart. Also, the monument has been portrayed by its sculptors Vladimir Shu and Vitaly Sivko after Zinovy Gert, the greatest Soviet actor who had brilliantly played Panikovsky in the respective movie. He made this thief and scam artist truly charming. So there's a movie that came out in 1968. We may look at that at some point. Let's keep reading here. So it's no wonder I never miss a chance to approach this awesome monument whenever I'm nearby. Panikovsky, according to the novel, had been making his living not far from this place on Prorzina, where the statue was established. The monument captures one moment of the working day of his greatest blind. He's crossing whatever that is with the helpless and compassionate passerby, and his left hand is reaching the poor pocket's fellow. This is why his posture is so unusual, and you might see people having their pictures taken with monument's hand in their pockets. There's another hidden trick about this monument that we locals know, but many visitors might miss. Look down at his feet. Panikovsky is stepping on the coin. We believe that touching his shoe or dropping a coin near this statue brings financial soundness. But if you look into the mirror at the bottom of the shoe, you'll see that was the author's joke. They wanted people to bow to this greatest scammer. So yes, the finger between or the thumb between the fingers, was basically an insult, basically saying, "Ha, we got you." The rope-a-dope. And it says, warning them about being too naive and too gullible. The Panikovsky monument is adored by Kievians, me included. Unfortunately, it's also fancied by vandals that steal its walking stick from time to time. So there's the comment below some of these images here of Panikovsky and the shoe. So now we have a pretty significant connection between Bo Mama and how he handled the situation. The bait and switch, while all the while NATO encroaching, and Bo Mama pretending like he's not seeing it and it doesn't exist. Wow. So here we are, 8 years later after 2014, and whatever Bo Jivan did, who was the VP to Bo Mama, whatever he did to piss off Putin enough to take action, it's just, that's crazy. The VP of the guy who kind of started all this, that is now the president. And the irony of this is just shocking. Now, let's go into the chat just for a little bit, because I wanted to get your guys' perspective on what that finger between, or the thumb between the fingers means from your European perspective. I know we have lots of Eastern Europeans or Western Europeans. I guess it's East Europe, sorry. Eastern Europe. And what that symbol means. And then we'll get into the final straw about what all this is about. The final link that definitively connects Bo Mama to the story of the little golden calf, as well as everything that's happening right now. Okay, little tomorrow, fake for something. A fig sign, says Sanja. Okay, thank you. I got your nose, someone said. So yeah. Wow, under the thumb. So it's the rope-a-dope. Now, let's keep getting into this, because there is a final straw. And I'm saying that because it is the final straw. Now, where'd it go? As you can see here, Panikovsky is wearing a straw hat. You can see it right here. Let me zoom it up for you guys. And many of you have seen this straw hat before. Where have we seen this straw hat? I'm going to show it to you right now. And this confirms the connection here on a spiritual level. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, you know, Bo Mama put this on in 1980 so that he could match what was going on here. Here's another image of him with a straw hat on. All I did was type in straw hat Bo Mama, as you can see right here, and these are the images that came up in the search. So it's not me stretching it. It is a straw hat, and that's what Panikovsky is wearing, a straw hat. Just bizarre, isn't it? These are all images from 1980 when he was in college. And what could this mean on a spiritual level? Well, straw hat is the straw man, right? The straw man argument, which is exactly what happened over there and is happening. Now, when these pictures were found or released, they whitewashed these pictures. It shows him like high out of his mind, but they basically said that, oh, that's because, you know, this is his college years. They tried to whitewash this, right? Here's the article here in The Guardian. A snapshot into Bo Mama's past, and he knows how to have fun when he was in college, you know, blah, blah, blah. I read a little bit of this article, but it definitely whitewashes it. You know, these unflattering, you know, images of him with his straw hat on, smoking, I don't know, a cigarette or whatever. I guess those were the times, I guess you could say. But there are more connections here. There are more connections here. Well, who was the 44th president? Bo Mama, who is now 44 years old. Zelensky, the president of the Stew Crane. Now, let's get back into the book, because there's a little bit more in this book. It's the PDF file of this book. We're going to go to page 14. And in here, they basically predict the Soviet Union breakup. Now, this is extraordinary because this suggests that the author had foreknowledge of the future history of Russia. Now, Russia used to make up the Soviet Union with 14 other countries, and it was called the Soviet Union. And those countries were split off beginning in like 1988, after the Cold War, almost 60 years after this novel was written. But let's see what the novel says, beginning on page 14. Those he didn't know received invitations through the grandsons of Karl Marx, whom he bumped into on occasion. And finally, in the early spring of 1928, nearly all the known children of Lieutenant Schmidt assembled in a tavern in Moscow near the Sukharev Tower. The gathering was impressive. Lieutenant Schmidt, as it turned out, had 30 sons who ranged in age from 18 and 52, and 4 daughters, none of them smart, young, or pretty. In a brief keynote address, Balagnov expressed hope that the brothers would at last come to an understanding and conclude a pact, the necessity of which dictated by life itself. According to Balagnov's plan, the entire Soviet Union was to be divided into 34 operational areas, one for everyone present. Each child would be assigned a territory on a long-term basis, and guild members will be prohibited from crossing the boundaries and trespassing into someone else's territory for the purpose of earning a living. This is basically the breakup of the Soviet Union. Now the numbers are off because there was only 14, but I'm sure a case could be made for 32. Maybe some of these areas were combined, used to be split up. I mean, we see this all the time with countries. They combine and split up. Were there 32 countries, or were there 14 plus Russia? That's for you to decide. It says all guild members will be prohibited from crossing the boundaries. I already read that part. Nobody objected to the new work rules except Panikovsky, who declared early on that he would do perfectly well without any pacts. NATO? The vision of the country was accompanied by some very ugly scenes, however. All parties to the treaty immediately started fighting and began addressing one another exclusively with rude epithets. The bone of contention was the assignment of the territories. Nobody wanted large cities with universities. Nobody cared for Moscow, Leningrad, or Kharkov. These cities had seen it all. To a person, they refused the Republic of Volga Germans. So, they're saying how Germany was excluded, or they wanted to exclude it. Why is that such a bad republic? Asked Balagnov innocently. I think it's a good place. As civilized people, the Germans cannot refuse to help out. Oh, come on, yelled the agitated children. Try to get anything out of those Germans. Apparently, quite a few of them have been thrown into jail by distrustful German colonists. The distant Central Asian region, buried in the desert sand, had a very bad reputation as well. They were accused of being unfamiliar with the person of Lieutenant Schmidt. So this goes on, and I'm sure there's many, many more pages of things in this novel that can be looked at that seem to point forward to what's happening today. I haven't gone through it. It's a lot to go through. It's a huge novel. It's 318 pages. But if you guys want me to do any word searches through this PDF document, we can do that now. Just put your requests in the chat and we can do word searches to see if anything crosses over to what's happening right now. So words or phrases. So that's what I wanted to show you guys today. Let's drag this over here so I get this next to our, there we go. And I'll go ahead and take requests for words or phrases that you want me to search in this document to see if there's anything else going on in it. Crazy. Okay, let's let that catch up a minute. All right. I'm just reading in the chat here, you guys. Okay, words you want me to search in the document. The thumb between the fingers is what grown-ups use when they pretending to take your nose. Yeah, that's the American version, but I think there's a European version as well. It's the basically I got you, or I fooled you. Thank you, you guys. Thanks, you guys are all part of this process of discovering this stuff, and so it's a stage. They're all friends with Schwab, exactly. Let me search America in the document. Let me see if there's anything like that in here. I don't know how they would find. Okay, here we have some hits on America. Children laugh foolishly. Scarves and ribbons flutter in the wind. Women chatter merrily. Fathers look at the driver's leather-clad back with respect and ask him about automotive developments in the United States of North America. For example, is it true that Ford buys himself a new car every day? So there's one reference to America. It's about Ford. America, there's the land. People there drink straight from the bottle. That's commendable, said Ostap. America's billionaires are learning about life in the new Soviet countryside. Wow. The two citizens of Chicago looked on sedately as their eyes were being repaired. Wow, Bo Mama's from Chicago. Think of the odds. Let's keep reading here. Ostap was introduced to the Americans. They're talking about moonshine, basically, and alcohol. Their politely raised hats floated in the air for a long time. Then they got down to business. The Americans chose the wheat moonshine. Okay, so there's the grain connection. Remember, Stu Crane is the breadbasket of Europe, and here they're talking about wheat moonshine. The simplicity of the brewing process appealed to them. They painstakingly record the recipe in their notebooks. So it looks like one of the characters learned how to make a still from the Americans. Seekers assured Ostap that given American technology, making such a still would be a breeze. So more of that. The man of the house had been in Archangel. The man of the house had been in Archangel with the American Expeditionary Force. He drank Pervach there and never forgot the alluring sensation it gave him. I don't know what that is. Americans easily parted with 200 rubles and endlessly shook Bender's hand. So, a lot of references to Americans here. It contained a book, The Capitalist Sharks, Biographies of American Millionaires. Another reference there. The two American gentlemen rolled on the broad Atlantic waves, carrying a recipe for delicious wheat moonshine. So that could be metaphor for the breadbasket of Ukraine. I don't know. Maybe an American millionaire can afford to be pig-headed, but Soviet millionaires must be more amenable. There's this guy. Toward the end of the first day, two envoys from the capitalist world appeared in the Soviet journalist's car. They were Mr. Heinrich, who represented a liberal Australian newspaper, and Hiram Berman, an American. They came to introduce themselves. Wow. An American economist is mentioned here. 4 American correspondents. Blue-blooded American woman from a distinguished family with a Dutch surname. Wow. Who was famous because a year earlier she had missed a train in the resort town of Mineraline, Vodi. Blue-blooded American woman. Been talking a lot about blue bloods lately, haven't we? The blue-blooded American woman emerged from the train wearing dark round sunglasses and holding a green parasol to protect herself from the sun. A gray-haired American pointed his IMO movie camera at her and filmed her in this outfit for a long time. First, she stood next to the camel, then in front of it, and finally squeezed herself in between its humps, which had been so warmly described by the attendant. Keep a close eye on her, or she'll actually get stuck there, and then there will be another sensation in the American press. He was present at the historic meeting at which Columbus ultimately failed to account for the funds that had been advanced to him to discover America. The first to change his uniform was one of the Americans. So there seems to be a lot of American jokes, kind of. International Red Cross put a note in the paper recently that they were searching for the heirs of Harry Kowalczyk, an American soldier who was killed in action in 1918. The inheritance, $1 million. Warsaw relatives and American soldiers was so okay. The storytellers paused for a moment, but the spell of unexpected riches poured from the pockets of Japanese princesses, Warsaw relatives, and American soldiers was so irresistible that they had soon resumed grabbing each other's knees and muttering. He had purchased American dollars that featured portraits of presidents with white curly hair, gold watches and cigarette cases, wedding rings, diamonds, and other valuable toys. So, I think that's about it for America. And only one reference to, three references to the United States, looks like. I think we covered most of those. At that level, the School of Continuing Education was imagined as a large stone building filled with desks where perky teachers draw graphs that show the rise of unemployment in the United States on their chalkboards, while mustachioed students develop political consciousness right in front of your eyes. For a few days, the construction headquarters resembled the United States just before a presidential election. The dries and wets locked their horns in battle. So, we could literally go through this all day long, but I just wanted to at least get some of the most important phrases and terms searched out of the way. I think America is probably a really good search term. You guys have any more you want me to look at before we can get off of here? Now, tomorrow we'll be covering the Outer Limits episode that we've been talking all about an artificial intelligence that creates man in its image, and then a faction of that artificial intelligence tries to prevent the second coming of man. That's their words from the episode. So I've already got screenshots put together for that, and I'll type up some notes today, and we'll get into that tomorrow. All right. So the propaganda, just some final thoughts on this before we end the decode today. The propaganda is off the charts. Many of you heard the State of the Union address by the president, making Russia sound like the big bad guy, a very evil man. Remember, how many times were we told this about these world leaders? Very evil man. And hopefully by now people understand that this is all just hype. It's to get people spiritually involved and invested in one side or the other. I refuse to take sides because ultimately people are being hurt. Even though a lot of that is hype, there are people, you could just tell by the buildings that have been destroyed that there are people being hurt. So I would hope that we would understand that we should not ever, condone that kind of activity. But there is a complete other side of the story. It's aggression on both sides. But it seemed to me that Russia was backed into a corner. It was a slow leak. It was the frog boiling in the pot. And finally, Russia woke up and said, we're done. You guys are basically staging against us. We're no threat. We've proven you that we're no threat over the past, 30 years, since the end of the 40 years, since the end of the Cold War. And yet you're still mounting up against us, forming basically a an army against us, forming an order against us. And I don't know how that fits together. Maybe Rushka's involved as well, and all this is just hype. It's some big show. I don't know. Maybe this is going to usher in the final New World Order, and this is all just a stage. And since none of us are in these back rooms and see what's going on, we can't say beyond a shadow of a doubt what's justified and what's not. At the end of the day, we have to see that people are being hurt. And you have to ask yourself, what would Jesus do? That is what we need to ask ourselves. What would Jesus do? Would he condone any of this? No, he wouldn't. Would he condone one country or a group of countries being aggressive against another? No, he wouldn't. But how would he handle that? I don't know how he'd handle that, but I don't think he would handle that by hurting more people. So, until the other side of the story gets told, and there's some kind of drawdown by NATO, and everyone agrees to get along, then people are going to continue to get hurt. But the drawdown has to come from both sides. Both sides need to draw down. Why are we allowing bases and weapons and missiles and all this on someone's country's border? We wouldn't put up with that if Mexico was doing that with China's help, would we? No, we wouldn't. If all Central and South America got together and said, we're going to join China in Russia, and we're going to start putting missiles in our ground, short-range missiles, right across your border, would we put up with that? No, we wouldn't. So, all that's on the table. Now, it's amazing because, to me, Russia has made a pretty good case. If you watch what their leaders are saying, they tell you everything I'm telling you right now. The funny thing, though, is none of this is being rebuked. None of this is not rebuked, but none of it's being rebutted by the other side. They simply pretend like they're not hearing it. No pro-US media outlets are even trying to fact check this stuff because everything they're saying is true. Everything that Russia is saying is true. They just pretend like they didn't hear it. It's crazy. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. No, they don't want to talk about what happened in some of the far eastern regions of Ukraine and what some of the Ukraine military was doing to the Russian people there. They don't want to talk about it. Mainstream media. They pretend like it didn't happen. Because why? Because if they were to talk about and admit that it actually did happen, then they would have to admit that they did nothing about it. Think of it this way. Imagine that our military here in America, right? Let's say, I don't know, just let's say National Guard or whatever, or just military. See, it's different here in America because we don't have military running around the streets unless it's like National Guard. But in other countries, the military runs around in the streets, okay? So imagine that here in America, in California, let's say California, let's use California as an example. All of a sudden, our military started taking people out. And at first they were isolated incidents, and then it became more brazen. But they weren't just taking people out, they were taking out people of Mexican descent. And specifically focused on people of Mexican descent. And just imagine that all of California and the rest of the United States did absolutely nothing about that. And watched it happen and heard it happen. And we didn't give the people a voice who this happened to. And that was just supposed to be okay. Imagine that. Well, that's exactly what's happened in Ukraine. The Russians that were living there came under attack, came under persecution by the Ukraine military, and they're specifically targeted. Now, estimates are, Russia is saying 15,000 of their citizens were killed. I don't know what the other side's saying in terms of the numbers that they're saying, but they're all admitting that something happened, right? So, where was the U.S. in all this? Why wasn't that talked about? Did you hear Bo Mama talking about this? I didn't hear him talking about the travesties that happened over there because they don't want to admit that the Ukrainian army is compromised. They don't want to admit that because that would be giving Putin, we're going to call him, a reason to go in. They don't want to give him, they don't want to acknowledge any reasons why he would want to do this. Now, don't take my word for it. Go onto the internet and read about the history. Here's what you do. Okay, because, Google is notorious for, once there's a new trending thing, everything else gets erased off the internet, right? Because you can't search it. It won't show up in a search. But there's a little tool in Google, and I use Google because it will give you the mainstream snapshot of how the world is thinking. Yeah, I could go and use other search engines, but we want a mainstream snapshot in this case. And so that way you find the very articles that they've already admitted to over the past history. You go in and you type in a date range. You type in the date range and you just rewind it back to, let's say, 2015. So everything before 2015 will show up in your search. And there you'll see the truth. Mainstream articles from Reuters and all these talking about the problem of the Yahtzees in the Ukraine. And the problem and all what happened and people that died there. But you don't see the U.S. saying anything about it. Saying how unfair that was. So that's a little project for you. If you want to know the true history, you can see everything for your own, with your own eyes. You don't have to take my word for it. Just do a date range search. Mainstream articles come up that nobody's talking about right now. All right, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and pop off of here. And I will prepare tomorrow's show today. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care and be safe, you guys. Much love.